Hi everyone! In this second part of our video on the analysis system, we're going to be looking at turn reports, locking and editing solutions, and the play against the solution feature. So, let's start with the turn reports. When you navigate through the tree, for example, here we have a check line, then you can click on the card symbol to select the next turn card. It's however also possible to see the data for all turns combined. For that, click on the card symbol and click on Turn Report. This will bring you to a table that will show all possible turn cards, and next to them the corresponding equity, EV, and betting frequencies. So for example, apparently the equity for the out of position player on a Jack of Diamonds turn is 54.34%. If I double click on the Jack of Diamonds, then it will be loaded in the tree. And if I go to the out of position player's decision, then we see that his equity is indeed 54.34%. If I select player 2, then we see the data for the in position player. However, here we only see equity and EV, because the in-position player does not get to act in the first decision. The navigator on top can be used to navigate to the data for a different turn decision. So after the out-of-position player checks, then this is all the data for the in-position player. So apparently, after the turn comes off as a 4 of clubs, and OOP checks, then IP's equity is 55.37%. And if we double-click on the 4 of clubs to load it, and navigate to the decision after OOP checks, then we see that IP's equity is indeed 55.37%. Next to the table, a graph is displayed. Currently we're sorting by equity, and the graph displays this data. We can also sort by EV, or betting frequency, or plot EV versus equity. Several output icons are available to the upper right. The second icon will display the active data for each possible card. Right now it's displaying the betting frequency for each card. Click above the table to see EV or equity. The third icon will offer a different way of displaying the same data. And the last icon will give a visual representation of the available actions. So apparently 10 of hearts has a very low betting frequency, and deuce of clubs has a very high betting frequency. Now this particular spot is not very interesting when it comes to the bet versus check frequencies. However, if you select a specific hand, I'll select Ace of Hearts, Jack of Hearts, then we can see that the out-of-position player clearly becomes more aggressive for certain cards and more passive for others. Please do observe that the feature of looking at specific hands is only available if your tree has been solved with extensive storage under Run Solver. Below the table, the average of the contents of the table are displayed. If you click on the output icon and copy this data to Excel, then you'll find that the average in Excel is slightly different. This is because the average in GTO Plus also contains internal weights and card removal. So the data in GTO Plus is the more accurate of the two. It's also possible to get the river reports. For that, just navigate to a turn line, click on the card for the next river, and select River Reports. The only difference here is that the river reports are computed live. So when loading one, just let GTO Plus run for a while, and left-click once you feel that you have achieved enough accuracy. The longer you wait, the more accurate the data will be. It's possible to force GTO Plus to use a certain strategy within a given decision. GTO Plus will then keep that decision locked at that strategy, and figure out the corresponding GTO strategy in the unlocked decisions. To lock a solution so that you can set your own strategy, navigate to the decision where you want to use a fixed strategy, and click on Lock and Edit Decision. For example, let's say that we only want to bet top pair or better and check everything else. For this, first select Check. The option Current Selection will display which action is currently selected. And now, double-click on the bar below the matrix to set the entire range as being checked. I will now select Bet and select all stats that are top pair or better by double-clicking them. You can also set up a mixed strategy. For that, click on Current Selection. And I will set up a bet versus check ratio of 3:1. And the current selection now shows a distribution of 75% versus 25%. I will now mouse over flush draw and select this distribution for the hands there. Now that I'm mousing over flush draw, the table will adapt and show which hands are in flush draw. I can just press my mouse down and mouse over everything that I want to select. You can also right-click to fix the statistic and click directly in the table or matrix. For example, let's say that I want to bet 100% with all ace-high flush draws. I'll select Bet and click on all ace-high flush draws in the matrix. To now let GTO Plus figure out the corresponding GTO strategy, go to Run Solver and click on Run Solver. Please observe that just setting a new strategy is not enough. After making changes in your tree, the solver needs to be run again in order to obtain the new GTO strategy. In the upper right, a lock symbol is displayed. This means that locks are present somewhere in the tree. If you mouse over the lock symbol, it will show where all the locks are currently present. So for example, if I set a lock on a river decision and mouse over the lock symbol, then the lock symbol will show that a lock is present after the action on the flop goes check-check, the turn is the 4 of clubs, the turn goes check-check, and the river is the 2 of hearts. To remove locks in your tree, click on the lock symbol and click on the locks that you want to remove. Finally, let's take another look at the Play Against the Solution feature. While playing, if you want to take a peek at the solution for a given spot, press Ctrl. And the buttons below the table will show the current solution. A training mode is also available. If you set this bottom toggle in the middle, and then make a mistake while playing, then the Play Against the Solution feature will freeze, show the correct solution, and offer you to try again. Now often, GTO solutions will contain a mix between actions, and it can happen that a certain action is almost never taken. Should you want an action with a low frequency to be considered as wrong, then you can apply rounding. For example, if we click here, and round for 3, then the solution will be rounded. And indeed, the solution is now rounded into parts of 3. Actions that are taken below this threshold are now considered as wrong. To see the original solution without rounding, press Alt. Now we have an option Previous here. If I turn it on, then the data on any previous decision will be displayed on top. In front of it, there will be one of 3 icons. A check mark for a correct decision, a red cross for a wrong decision, and in this case we have an orange cross, which means that the decision was technically correct, but considered wrong because of rounding. If you want to drill a certain decision in your tree, for example after the action goes check, bet, then navigate to that decision by using the navigator on top. go to the Play Against the Solution feature, select Drill the current decision, and start playing. And now, every hand will start at that decision. You can also always play with a specific hand for hero, or a selected range. For example, if I select that every hand for hero should be top pair, then if I start playing, then indeed hero is now dealt top pair. To see villain's whole cards, click on them. Similarly, you can also peek at which turn and river cards are about to come off. For a list of the available options, click here. A hand history of all played hands is displayed on the right. To review a previously played hand, mouse over it. And double-click it to replay the hand. And click Stop to stop the replay. Finally, to let the solver play itself, press Ctrl and right-click on Hero's field. So, that's it for the second video on the analysis system. I hope that you enjoyed this video.